Okay, so like no exaggeration, I've been waiting over an hour to film this video. My neighbor was mowing his lawn and making so much noise. And so I was like, okay, I'll just take Levi out for a walk, and when we come back, he'll be all done. And right as we got back, he was finishing up, and I'm like, perfect. And I set up my camera and I go to hit record, and my other neighbor starts mowing his lawn. So I guess this is like suburban life in the summer, but not complaining because we're short sleeves finally. Anyways, about a year and a half ago, I made a video detailing my plan, or at least my goal, to be able to be semi-retired by the age of 35. If you haven't seen that video yet, I will link to it up here. I'll put the link in the description box below as well. An update video has been highly requested. Many of you have left me comments asking where I'm at in that whole process, if I'm still on track and what's going on. And so that is what we're going to be talking about in today's video. For those of you who haven't seen that old video, which is probably most of you because my channel was very, very tiny at the time that I made it, I'm going to kind of start off by giving you guys a quick overview of where I was at that point, what the plan was, and then we will talk about where I'm at now, what has changed since, and what the strategy is going forward. So basically, I have been following what is known as the FIRE community, or the FIRE movement, for quite a while now. For anybody who doesn't know about the FIRE community, it stands for Financially Independent Retired Early. Oh, come on. You've got to be kidding me. I'm gonna go close the door here. Give me half a second. Jesus Christ. I'm sure you guys can still hear that a little bit in the background. I'm sorry, it's the best that I can do, because otherwise I'm not going to be able to film again until like November. Anyways, a FIRE community, the FIRE movement. So it stands for Financially Independent Retired Early, and it is essentially a group of people whose goal is to be able to, as it suggests, become financially independent and retire very early. These are people who are often able to retire in their late 20s, maybe in their 30s, even in their 40s. And the way that they do this is through a number of different things, but predominantly having either a very high income or a very low cost of living, or ideally both. So you're often seeing people who are well into the six figures as earners, who are able to keep their cost of living very low, either by simply living somewhere where there's a very low cost of living, by doing something like house hacking, by living in multi-generational homes. There's many different ways they can approach this.
Please don't tell anyone how I live.
But essentially, by having such a low cost of living with such a high income, they're able to save the vast majority of their income and invest it, and then they're able to stop working at a young age and live off of the returns of their investment. And that sounds lovely, but unfortunately, that's not something that I'm going to be able to achieve, because not only do I not have a very high income, but I also don't have a low cost of living. The cost of living here is actually quite high, and my income is pretty mediocre at best. So that's not something that has ever been on the agenda for me, or really even a goal, because as much as I like my free time, being fully retired at the age that I'm at now, I'm currently 30, it's not necessarily appealing to me. I don't want to never have to work again, at least not at this point. I just want a different relationship to my work, and we're going to talk more about that in a moment. Within the FIRE movement, there are many different branches, I guess would be the best word to use. So what I was specifically working towards is what's known as Baristafy. Baristafy is when you're able to save and invest enough money that you can sustain most of your expenses from that, but you still need a part-time job to keep you afloat the rest of the way. So a lot of people go and they get a job being a barista, for example, but the idea is that you're able to not really retire, but to step away from full-time work, to step away from a stressful job, to step away from needing to earn a full-time income, and you're able to instead spend your time working part-time, or working on a freelance project, or doing something that still generates some income for you, but with much less intensity and much less time commitment. At that time, I had crunched some numbers, and I had figured out that my monthly mortgage payment accounted for about 50% of my total monthly expenses. I had decided that if I was able to save and invest enough money to cover just my mortgage payment every month, I was more than happy to keep working on a part-time basis to cover the rest of my expenses. So I figured out what that number was, how much money I needed to be able to save up to make that happen, and I was working towards that slowly but surely. I'm somebody who has been quite honest about the fact that I have never enjoyed working, and that is not a testament to my specific job or anything other than the fact that I just really like to have my own time to do the things I want to do. I don't think that makes me at all unique or special. I think most people probably feel that way, but maybe other people are able to kind of just accept it a little easier than I always have been. I just want my life to be more balanced. I want to be able to spend more time doing the things I want to be doing, and of course work is a part of life, but I don't think it needs to be the main part. I don't think that it should be the all-consuming thing where you work, and then schedule the rest of your life around your job. I want it to be the opposite. I want to be able to have a life and just schedule little bits of work here and there in between. So that was kind of the goal. Now, as most of you guys know, I was living in a small townhouse at the time that I filmed that video, and I've since moved to this house, which is detached. It's a little bit larger, the bills are a little bit higher, and I had expected all of that. In fact, before I moved, I had done some math and figured out that as long as the expenses for the new house fell within a certain range, I was expecting an increase. As long as it was within a range I was comfortable with, I'd be totally fine with it, and it wouldn't really put too much of a damper on my plans, and so I was all good with that. What I wasn't expecting was to fall into the real estate mess that I found myself in. Again, I've made a couple of videos about this, but essentially I wound up getting less money when I sold my townhouse than I had expected. It sold for lower than I thought it was going to. And as a result, I came into this house and I had to get a bigger mortgage than I had hoped. And so that definitely put a little bit of a crimp in my plans because my expenses wound up being higher, not just higher than the last house, but higher than I had anticipated. But that's not all. Yes, my mortgage is a bit higher here. Yes, the property taxes are a little bit more. Yes, the utilities are a little higher. To some degree, I had anticipated all of that. What I hadn't anticipated is what everybody else has also figured out, which is that the cost of living in the last year or two has skyrocketed beyond belief. So as much as I had budgeted for a higher mortgage and higher taxes, I did not budget for having to spend basically twice as much on groceries. I did not budget for basically having to spend twice as much on gas. My insurance has gone up for the house, for the car, for my business. I haven't had claims on any of those things, but insurance premiums are at a high. And so even though I still fell within that range that I was comfortable in when it came to the expenses for this new house, the extra money that I'm now spending on gas, groceries, and all my other day-to-day expenses has definitely pushed me higher than I wanted to be. Now, those expenses would have gone up either way, whether I had moved or not, but because I'm dealing with them in addition to the higher housing costs, it definitely makes me feel the burn a little bit more. But wait, there's more. Not only is my mortgage higher and my taxes higher and my utilities higher, not only are gas and groceries and everything else completely out of control now, but just shortly before I moved, Levi got diagnosed with a heart condition. And that means that there have been a lot of vet bills in the last 2 years. He has to get all of the same routines and procedures and tests that people do when they have heart conditions. So he gets echocardiograms, blood pressure monitors, he gets blood work, he gets chest x-rays, and that stuff is bloody expensive. And then he's on medication as well. He's on a heart medication and he's recently on blood pressure medication additionally. So he has actually become, other than my mortgage, my second biggest expense, which is wild. So all of that is to say that between the move, between gas and groceries and everything being so expensive now, and between Levi's medical needs, my overall monthly expenses have ballooned quite a bit, a lot more than I had hoped, a lot more than I had expected, and it's kind of just what it is. There's not a whole lot I can do about that, but it has taken a big chunk out of my ability to save on a month-to-month basis. Another thing worth mentioning, and if you have investments of your own, then you already know this, but the stock market has also gone down quite a bit. Obviously, I intrinsically knew that there is volatility involved when you invest. Things go up, things go down, they go back up, they go back down. It's how it goes. But I do think that I went into my plan with a little bit too much optimism, and I didn't expect there to be as much volatility in the short term as there has been. So unfortunately, my current investment situation is actually worse right now than it was when I filmed that initial video a year and a half ago. Back then, my investments were actually worth quite a bit more than they are today. I'm not really worried about it. I know that it will recover in time, but the point is that right now it doesn't look like I'm making any progress. And of course, when you move, there's so many expenses over and above just your month-to-month carrying costs. When I moved into this house, all this stuff went wrong. I wound up renovating as well, which cost me a lot of money, and that's money that I otherwise could have been putting towards my investments, but I haven't. When I moved in, the air conditioning broke almost immediately. And so in truth, I haven't actually been able to contribute to my investments pretty much since I moved. So it's been like a full year. And yeah, I'm definitely not making the progress that I hoped that I'd be making. So if you were to look strictly at the math, strictly at the numbers, it does not look like I'm on track whatsoever to meet my goal. But a lot has changed for the better as well, and that's what I want to talk about next. At the time that I had devised that initial fire plan, I had this mindset of just wanting to save as much money as physically possible by any means necessary to be able to reach that goal, because I was feeling so burnt out and so desperate to just not have to work so much anymore that I thought if I just powered my way through and didn't really spend money on anything else ever and just saved as much as I possibly could and worked as hard as I possibly could, that I would get there as fast as possible, and that was the goal. And honestly, I mean, I should have known this going into it. That wasn't necessarily sustainable either. Work has always been a very big source of anxiety and misery for me. And again, it has nothing to do specifically with my job. I just feel this overwhelming sense of dread when I wake up in the morning and I know that I have to go spend my day doing this thing that I probably don't really want to be doing that much. There's other things I'd rather be doing. And work at that point was probably one of my biggest sources of unhappiness in my life. But when I went through this entire real estate fiasco, I wound up honestly having a very severe mental breakdown. And it's not a good thing that that happened, but by comparison, pretty much everything else in my life doesn't seem that stressful anymore. And that is a weird thing to digest, because that was probably the worst experience of my life, the most stressful, most like heartache inducing experience of my life. And it's something that I would never ever in a million years want to repeat. It's something that if I could go back and not have to live through it, I 100% would. But it's almost like it scarred me so badly and it stressed me out so much that nothing else really bothers me that much anymore. And so as much as I still want to have my time to myself, as much as I would still like to achieve some sort of financial independence, the truth is that work doesn't really seem to stress me out as much as it used to. It's definitely still, again, not my favorite thing to do with my time, but the stressful factor doesn't seem to be there anymore, which I am so grateful for. As of late, I've been kind of just letting go a little bit of a lot of the pressure that I seem to put on myself and a lot of the pressure that I seem to carry on my shoulders. And rather than thinking about how I can optimize every dollar in my life and how I can save more and make more and save more and try and get to that goal line quicker, I've been kind of just like allowing myself to live a little bit more, which I know sounds like common sense, but it's something that, you know, I've struggled with, and I've talked about this in other videos as well. But I've been treating myself a little bit more within reason to things that I feel like actually dramatically improve the quality of my life. I've been allowing myself to spend more money on things that bring me happiness and joy, even if they aren't essential things, even if they aren't like strict needs. And as a result of that, I have felt better going into work also, knowing that, you know, the money that I'm making is not just going to fulfill some long-term hopeful goal, but it's actually improving the quality of my life today. So that's also a benefit. There's this little story that I've heard. I don't know if it's like a proverb or really what it is, but I'm probably gonna butcher it. Essentially, apparently there's a Mexican fisherman and he's in a little boat on the lake and he's fishing and he gets 3 or 4 fish. And once he's done that, he packs them up and he leans back in his boat and cracks open a beer and decides to just enjoy the rest of his day. And there's like a businessman on the side of the shore watching him, who runs over and goes like, "What are you doing? Why are you packing up? You could be getting more fish." And he's like, "Well, why would I want to do that? This is all I need." And he goes, "Well, if you got more fish, you could get more money. And if you got more money, then you could, you know, get a bigger boat. And if you got a bigger boat, then you could get someone else to come work with you. And, you know, you could do this and you could do that, and you could do this and you could do that. And then when all is said and done, you could just spend your time, you know, sitting in the sun drinking beer." And the guy says to him, the fisherman says to him, "What does it look like I'm doing right now?" And I had heard that before and I understood it. But the truth is that I think that that's kind of more of the mindset I'm having in right now. You know, I've been racing towards this goal of like, you know, make this much so you can save this much and get to this goal by this point. And then once you do that, you'll be able to do A, B, C, and D. And I'm like, well, what if instead of saving all of my money to be able to do those things in the future, what if I just like do those things now and not worry as much about the future? I still want to have financial stability, of course, but what if I just, you know, instead of saying, oh, well, you'll get to a point where you can afford to travel, or you can afford to go to concerts more, you can afford to do this, you can afford, I'm like, theoretically, if I didn't have such an emphasis on trying to save money, I could afford to do a little bit more of that, at least right now. And so that's kind of the mindset that I've been in. With that said, the idea of working full-time indefinitely for the foreseeable future to me still is very overwhelming, very daunting, and very upsetting. But there's one more thing, and it's something that I did not see coming in a million years, and it's this YouTube channel. I've been pretty transparent with you guys so far about how much money I've been making here. I made a whole video detailing how much money I earned on my first YouTube paycheck, and I will happily make an update for you guys in a few months from now and keep you in the loop about how it's going. I'm not making a fortune here by any means. I'm not making a living here. There's no way in a million years that I could survive off of the money that I make on this channel. But it has been a little bit of a part-time side income for me, and I am so blown away by that and so grateful for that and still so mind blown and shocked by it, to be honest with you. I'm hoping that sooner than I expect maybe, this YouTube channel is gonna grow not to a point of being a full-time income for me at all, but maybe being able to fill that kind of fire goal that I had, where maybe it will be able to cover a third or a half of my monthly expenses, which would be amazing. Now, I don't feel like this is the same thing as achieving that barista-fi that I wanted, because the whole idea with that was that it was going to be really hands-off. I would just be withdrawing from my investments and kind of living my life. And YouTube, despite the fact that I like it, is hard work. Like, this is not passive income in the least. This is very active. I basically have a second job now doing this, and the hourly wage is not very good, I'll tell you. But it does offer a lot of benefits that my regular job doesn't. Remote work being a big one, where obviously I can do this from home. I can do this to some degree on whatever schedule works best for me. It's very flexible. I could travel and still do this. And those are all privileges that I've never had before in a regular job. I've always been very location dependent and very stuck to where I'm at. So again, this isn't really the goal that I had in mind. This wasn't part of the plan, but the idea that this YouTube channel could potentially help me to be able to, sooner than later, not yet, not in 6 months probably, maybe not even in a year or two. I'm not 100% sure of the timeline, but the idea that it could at some point in the reasonable future allow me to reduce the number of hours I have to spend at my regular job is crazy to me and might be my path forward here. And so, you know, all of that in summary would be to say that, am I on track for my original goal? I am not. Has the goal changed a little bit? It definitely has. Am I unhappy that I'm off track? It depends on the day, to be honest. Some days I'm like, oh gosh, you know, you have a bad week at work and you're like, oh, I wish I could just retire already. I wish I just had a bunch of money and I didn't have to deal with this shit anymore. And then there's some days where, you know, it doesn't really bother me as much. And knowing that I have this secondary small business, very small business, that is growing, I wouldn't say steadily or rapidly, but growing kind of in its own way, and that this opportunity to make YouTube videos could eventually be a significant part of my monthly income is very exciting to me, and it allows me the opportunity to find kind of another way around. And I think that that's a really prominent theme in life, is that whatever goal it is that you have, whatever it may be, there's definitely more than one way to get there. And I think that that's something that I've had to learn along the way. I've always been a very rigid person where I'm like, you know, I decide what I want to do and like, this is the path forward, this is how to do it, and this is what I'm going to try to do. But more often than not, you find a back door, you find a window open, you find another way to squeeze in and get it, whatever it is that you're going after. And it may not be the path you started on, it may not be the way you thought it was going to work out, but somehow it kind of does. As I mentioned earlier, this update video was pretty highly requested, so I'm hoping that I answered all of your questions. If you feel like there's anything that I glossed over, or anything I wasn't clear about, or just something I didn't talk about that you're curious about, drop me a comment down below and go ahead and ask, and I'll try to answer it for you. As curious as some of you guys have been about my progress on the situation, I'm equally curious about where you expected that it was going to be. I don't know if some of you assumed that I was like fully retired and just didn't tell anybody, or that I'm like a YouTube millionaire now. Unfortunately, neither of those things are true, but if you found value in this video and it's something you want to see more of, let me know in the comment section, and I will try to keep you guys in the loop as much as possible as things progress and change, and they always do progress and they always do change. If you enjoyed this video at all, please go ahead and hit that like button. Feel free to subscribe if you haven't done so yet. You can follow me on Instagram. You can check me out on